Well, I think we have to start with the Second Amendment of the United States, and I think that we have to start with just the press that's been put on by the state of Connecticut, Maryland, and even Canada, where you actually have police who are arbitrarily banning, confiscating firearms. And you have to ask yourself, why all of a sudden, I think as Greg and I get into what the events are going to play out and the way they're going to play out, at least to the best of our ability to put two and two together, it should come as no surprise that in the heat of an escalating world tension situation, and there are even rumors today that the Russians are putting nuclear weapons on their bombers. Obviously, they've challenged us in the Arctic. They're challenging us in the South China Sea. They're in Venezuela. They're in Cuba. And you've got to ask yourself, what is there to gain by escalating the world tension except to bring down a current or an existing form of world government and substitute, just like the opening speech by George Bush on your intro music. Sheila, they're getting ready to go for the big prize of the United States. It's hard for Americans to look at how fast our country has literally fallen down. We've left our ways. Everything that we once believed in has been challenged. The America that I see is not the America I grew up with. And now, one of the typical things I get from Canadian listeners daily in my emails is, what will this mean for Canada? It means the exact same thing for Canada that it does for the United States. And so, as we talk about the gun control issue, they want a flashpoint. And what's really hard to get your mind around and our minds around is how the United States government can have in excess of 800,000 foreign troops here to enforce gun confiscation and to basically do away with what everyone used to believe that the United States stood for, not just the right to keep and bear arms, but look at our currency. Look where it was once the most revered currency in the world. And yet you hear daily that this administration is having another $59.6 billion or X number of $1 trillion. And somebody said, well, they're printing money like there's no end. Well, they're printing money to basically get the whole world to no longer accept the U.S. dollar. But where this becomes relevant, every time, and this is where I'm going to turn over to Greg immediately, every time there has been gun confiscation in the history of the world or arms confiscation, some of the bloodiest and most brutal dictatorships have come into play. And when I see, specific law enforcement agents like Vance in Connecticut making the statement that it's un-American not to surrender your weapons, it's un-American. It's a communist statement to want to take the guns away from the Americans. Fraud of Sandy Hook and everything else. So, Greg, go ahead and take it, and when you're ready to give it back, but take it and expand it to the fullest extent.
Thank you, Steve. I have to tell you that within the last 24 hours, a very interesting hypothesis has been sent my way. I wish I was smart enough to have come up with it, but I will pass it along, and I think that it really does draw the curtain back just a bit. We must understand that all of this, and when I say all of this, I'm talking financial developments, certainly the issue in the Ukraine, and it goes across the board, across this country, across the world. This is an interlaced, seamless agenda to move the final stroke of the clock to midnight, where the gigantic conspiracy is about to unfold. Look, having been in law enforcement so many years and military prior to that, I can tell you that the greatest conspiracies that I've seen hatched over my career came from within law enforcement. Whether it was to take down some bad guys, it was to make sure that something didn't occur that we knew of. It was conspiracy to get the job done. Only we were able to do it because it was legal for us to do it. So are we now looking at a legal conspiracy to bring down world order and institute new world order? I believe we are. I believe this is the heart of it. And when I heard that in the last day, I thought this is beyond even the most advanced schemes that we've heard about. I think that this is entirely possible, Sheila, and I will tell you that I think that because of that, you will see that all of this bluster and going on by former KGB Colonel Putin is all planned obsolescence of the old order and a welcome to the new world. Steve, you have set these tracks out very well in the past. You're right on top of it today, and I think this program could open the door for an awful lot of people getting it maybe for the first time.
Well, go ahead, Sheila. I'm going to, after Greg or I turn it over, we want to be, respective and obviously honor your position as being the host, because we're both wound up about this. So if there's anything you want to interject.
Here's the thing. People, if you're not angry that your government is planning on murdering you, what, Steve and Greg, what is it going to snap people out of the zombified trance here? What's it going to take? Because, Greg, our forefathers would be shooting by now. It could very well be this flashpoint of this second shot heard around the world, because look at the confiscation going on. Look at the situation in Connecticut. This is a sci-fi come to life here.
I call it zombie protocols. Now, here's what everyone's got to understand. These guys know, and they know very clearly, that even with all of their firepower and everything that they can muster against the American people, that there still is a question of allegiance. And, one of the most heartbreaking, I would say, points that I've ever had on the radio is to see this stuff coming years ago, and I'm not grandstanding, I'm saying this, trying to warn the veterans, trying to get them out of harm's way, telling them they are in harm's way, telling them what the plan is. And this is one of my hot buttons, okay? So just in the last 3 or 4 days, as Greg has heard from his sources, I've heard from my sources, ladies and gentlemen, does it not make you wake up? And I want to say something, Sheila. Any law enforcement agent, any military officer or infantryman, any state, local, or county politician who votes for the disarmament of the American public is a co-executioner in the plans that have been made. They're not coming for the guns. They're coming for the gun owners. And, Sheila, I have battled with, quote, patriots. I put that in whatever question marks to an exclamation mark. I've battled with Christians. I've battled with constitutionalists because they say they would never do that. Both Greg and I know from our independent sources and people that are absolutely of the highest moral character, moral fiber, men and women who love their country, men and women who love God, what orders are being given, what at all stages, and you said it earlier, what does it take to wake people up? So this is what I'm trying to tell the American gun owners, and I'll stand face to face with anybody and debate them. It's not about taking away the guns. It's about taking the gun owners away, as in permanently. You would not have the firepower and show of force being specifically implemented if you did not intend to use it. And it's not going to be the Battle of the Alamo. It's not going to be the OK Corral. And it's not going to be another Waco, God forbid, or Ruby Ridge. What this is going to be is full-scale military action against the gun owners of the United States by foreign mercenaries with a missionary zeal to destroy the American gun owner. Greg, is that in any way, how do I say this, is that sugarcoating it?
Steve, I don't think, I've never heard you do that, sugarcoat anything. Look, here's where we are, unfortunately. Whether it's the Georgia State Patrol, Kansas State Patrol, or some other organization, they have been practicing with government money for the last several years at an unprecedented level the confiscation and the act of confiscating weapons within these state organizations. They will be a part of as I said before, seamless organization from the federal government down, that when the order is given, you see, here is where it breaks down for the American people. When you have a detachment of whatever size, 30, 40, 50 or more, tactical officers blended in with street officers and regular district officers being assigned a given block or area to go into and disarm, the 4 or 5 gun owners that may have gotten together at the last moment and are standing their ground will not have a moment or two to react to the offense that will take place on their front step. They will not be able to overcome it. So the only way the American people can fight Paul Vance, who is, I'm ashamed to say that he's a state police officer that made the remarks about being un-American and I am the master. Master of what? Connecticut has led the way here in the last few days in showing us one more time that when it comes down to it and the orders are given, those men and women in the field will follow the orders, with some exceptions, of course. But what I'm trying to say here is, men and women of this country, if you are going to stand in the gap with generations of men like the Iwo Jima, 91-year-old Iwo Jima veteran, who told me just a couple of months ago, Greg, why did we do this? What did we do this for? Is this all it amounted to? All my friends that died, the men who are wounded, the men who have never recovered, never returned. This is what it was for. And I told that gentleman that day, and I will tell the comrades that I have out there where I know where they stand, is now it is time for you to stand for the people of this country one more time. Because if you do not, if you don't get this straight, and we don't stand together en masse as a group now, before the shooting start, it will never, ever be a matter that we can recapture the peace. It will not end until one side or the other lies bloodied and defeated.